episode number 592, talking to kids about the deepfake.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
So today we're talking with Chelsey Greer. Chelsey, you've had an interesting lesson that you taught your students recently. Let's talk about what you did and your technique that you did it, and then let's dive into your student opinions.
Thanks so much for having me on, Vicki. I was driving to work one morning and I was listening to your episode about the deep fake. And I just knew from hearing that I needed to share that with my students. So we kind of pushed our schedule aside and the project we were working on, we put it on pause, and I shared that with my 7th grade students. While we were listening to the podcast, they took some notes and had a Backchannel chat, just putting down their ideas and their questions and what they were thinking while they were listening. When we finished listening, we came together and we had a conversation about it. And I was so blown away by the things that the students said. They were asking questions like, why would somebody make these kinds of videos? Why would somebody purposefully try to hurt other people? They wanted to talk about why negativity spreads so much faster than positive things out there. And they wanted to talk about why people care so much about likes and shares online. And we talked about the pressures that middle school students and teenagers are feeling with social media. And I was just blown away by the depth of the conversation. And I really think that we need to be having those conversations with our students.
Of course, we'll reference back to the show. It was a deepfake episode, I believe, with Wesley Fryer recently, where we talked about, what is the deepfake? And to summarize briefly, there is the ability out there now to basically create a video of someone saying something that they didn't really say. So in addition to, photoshopping photos, which we haven't been able to believe photos for a while, now we can't really even believe the videos that we see. And you took that podcast and you played it for your students. Now, first of all, let's just kind of dissect this. What Backchannel chat tool did you use? Because there are a lot out there, but did you pick one in particular?
We used the Google Slide question and answer option. I use Google Slides I put my learning objectives up and our schedule for the day, and any links or QR codes, whatever we're working on that day is on a Google Slide. So we just opened up the Q&A for the students to use that as a channel to talk about it.
Cool. So as it's going through, what kind of comments are you seeing coming through? Because I assume you just played it all the way through and just kind of watched the comments go back and forth. What did they kind of start with as they realized, oh my goodness, this is happening?
The first thing that they were thinking is, what is this? Why is this happening? They were asking questions like, is this a new technology? Some students who were a little more aware of this type of thing were responding and saying, no, this is not totally new. It's not something in the future. That creating these videos and like fake news, as you will, has been around for a long time. So they kind of had that discussion about, understanding what you're seeing, what you're reading, and understanding that you need to really think carefully about what you trust. And as you just said, it turned to not just questioning the sources that we're reading, but also questioning everything that we're seeing.
Now, did you look at any of the Spector videos, the fake, Mark Zuckerberg and Donald Trump and all of those fakes?
Yes, we have watched a couple. I pulled up some YouTube videos for the students to see and just kind of put in deep fake. And there were some great videos that kind of showed examples, some with Barack Obama and Donald Trump, and the students were able to see how realistic they were and see how hard it can be to tell what's real and what's not. We had just done a lesson prior to this where we were evaluating sources, and students were talking about what questions they would ask when they're reading a source or looking for information to help them understand. So this was the perfect timing for them to hear this and have this discussion and add that layer of realizing that you can't always trust what you're seeing and what you're hearing.
Wow. So you get through this, they realize, okay, this is possible. How are they going to grapple with a world you can't even trust the videos you see?
Students seemed a little shocked by that. I think they needed a little more time to really let that sink in and what that means for their future. But I was so proud of them that they turned the conversation to what they can do and their social responsibility as digital citizens. And making sure that what they're posting and what they're creating is positivity and spreading that positivity, because we talked about how bad news travels fast and how they see in their own lives that negativity on social media travels so fast. So we talked about cyberbullying, and we talked about using the skills and the knowledge that they have to create positive videos to spread kindness. So I was so proud of them that they really turned this conversation, which, you're going down a rabbit hole of how scary this can be to not be able to trust anything that you're seeing and hearing, into an opportunity for them to make a difference.
So you said that they wanted to talk a little bit about the pressures and the stress that they're under. What kind of things did they want to talk about with that angle?
Yeah. So one of the students had said, why do people care so much about likes and shares? No student in the classes really had an answer to that, but they could all agree that they recognize that pressure is there. Even the students who don't yet have social media accounts could still recognize that it's important in their lives. And we talked about that. And I think our students are not always hearing from adults around them that validation of that pressure. And I think that that's something that many teachers and adults, we didn't grow up with that pressure. And I think that's something very new to this generation. And it's a very real stressor and point of anxiety in their lives. So I think just hearing from me that I was listening to them talk about it, I think was huge. And it's something that I've been sharing with my colleagues in my school, that it's a conversation I think our students need to have with adults and with each other more often, because that pressure, it doesn't leave them. I read an article recently about how students would feel stressed by, something going on at school, if somebody's being mean or they're feeling frustrated or they're having a hard time with a friend, and they could go home and they can escape that pressure. And home was a safe place that they could relax and let things go from school. Well, with the generation now, they can't let go of that. It follows them home. It's on their phones. It's on their tablets. It's on all their devices. And that pressure never goes away. They never get that reprieve that they need at the end of the day. So that anxiety level just stays heightened. I think our students need to know that we recognize that and that we are here to listen and be a safe place for them to talk about the stress and the pressures they're feeling.
Well, and I had Tim Elmore on the podcast recently, and he talked about that the measured anxiety level of today's youth is equal to that of psychiatric patients in the 1950s.
And I listened to that episode too, and I keep sharing that fact. I was astounded by that. And I've shared that with some of the parents of my students, and they're just shocked, because I think parents and teachers were not really sure how to help students with this. It's not something any of us have ever experienced. And so I feel like as a teacher, the best thing I can do at this point is to have conversations and to listen and be a safe place for my students.
I think that what you've hit on, the conversations, the safe place, being there to listen. We had a student last month that died, and there have been times where we've had to sit and talk and listen and go through that together. You do have to listen, and you do have to have a safe place, and things aren't always easy, and kids have mixed opinions on these things, but they do need to talk about them, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think we spend so much time making sure we're getting through our curriculum and we're getting our kids ready for the careers and that they're going to have in their futures. But I think we also need to help them develop those communication skills and know when it's okay to just stop and talk, because we know how important their social emotional state is and how important that is. And I think every teacher has the responsibility to guide students through that part of their lives too.
So Chelsey, it sounds like that having a conversation is kind of part of how you teach your class. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. I think every now and then a student will just kind of say something that makes me think, or I'll notice another student kind of respond to them and think. And sometimes we just have to stop what we're doing and say, guys, let's just come together. Let's talk about this and let's kind of wrap our head around this. And I think the best learning comes from that. I think that's an authentic moment, and we have to jump on those moments because they can take us to such incredible places and really increase the learning in that moment. And I think that's our responsibility.
Well, and we have to capture those opportunities. There are opportunities that pass. It would be like somebody taking a trend from, I'm not going to teach filmmaking with the Harlem Shake right now. Like that's old. We don't do that anymore, you know?
Right.
So when something passes, you kind of miss that opportunity. But when you have the opportunity, that's when you need to have the conversations. And of course, we've got political elections coming up. We just had on Facebook a bust of a lot of accounts that I believe a Russian businessman was trying to use to manipulate public opinion. I mean, there's all these things that we can talk about now, and we should. So, Chelsey, thank you for being transparent, taking us into your classroom, talking about how you've used this conversation about deepfake. I always love it when teachers circle back around and say, hey, this is how I use this in my classroom, because that's really, honestly, what this podcast is about, Chelsey. It's about improving the classroom. You know, if we just listen to podcasts and we never do anything with it, we never share it, we never talk about it with our students, we never use it to make our classroom a better place, then what is the point? It's just entertainment. It's not professional development. And I think the best podcasts are podcasts that we do something with. So thank you, Chelsey. It's all, truthfully, you can put great content out there, but it's all the kind of listener you are. You're a listener and a doer and somebody who takes it and transfers it into action. So applause to you, Chelsey.
Thanks so much, Vicki.
Well, today your challenge is to think about talking to your students. When you get back in the classroom with your kids, how are you going to have conversations? How are you going to make things relevant about what is in their life today? And this whole conversation about being, quote, liked or sharing content that people like and that pressure, you know, the majority can be wrong. And the problem that scares me even more, though, is the perceived majority. There are many issues where we perceive that a majority or cacophony of people support something when in reality they don't. It could be manipulated by the algorithms or even the political leanings of those in our circle, or, you know, say a platform could have a political leaning and have the algorithms favor their political topics. So having these conversations about deepfake and manipulation and being liked, these are all part of the things that we need to have these conversations with our kids. And so I actually was inspired after I recorded this with Chelsey, and I went and had a conversation with my 8th graders about this topic. And it was a very powerful conversation that we needed to have. So I used my own podcast for that. It was sometimes you don't think about doing things until somebody points out the obvious. And I think it's a great conversation to have and talk about the deep fake. Thanks for listening, and get out there and have those conversations.